So one of the first things that we do in geometry is we review the algebra that you need in order to succeed in this class. So these are some things that you should have learned last year, and I just wanted to go through these concepts and make sure that you remember them from what you learned in Algebra 1. So, first concept here is the distance formula. That's to find the distance between 2 points. Okay, if I give you 2 points, it's basically this formula here, which we'll talk about. But basically, if you have 2 points, let's say x sub 1 comma y sub 1 and x sub 2 y sub 2, your x sub 1 is here and your x sub 2 is here, so you're basically looking at the difference between the x values, squaring it, and then adding it to the difference between the y values, squaring it, and then take the square root of that. The second formula is what we call the midpoint formula. Midpoint formula is basically, it's the average of the x values, comma, the average of the y values. It's the point that's right between, it's the equal distance between the 2 points that we are asking for you to find the midpoint of. The next formula should be very familiar to all of you. This is a slope formula. It's basically the change in the y values divided by the change in the x values, or otherwise known as the rise divided by the run. And we do use this formula quite a bit. We use it when we're trying to identify a slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. You need the slope. M is your slope for that. B, of course, is your y-intercept. Point slope form is something that I'm going to use quite a bit. When I teach Algebra 1, I usually try to emphasize using point slope form. It's the easiest form, I think, to use. And then the last form here is called general linear form or standard form. Ax plus by plus c equals 0. Sometimes some books have it as ax plus by equals c, and where you'll see this used most often is when we're doing systems of equations. You'll see equations like 2x plus 3y equals 6, or you need to line up all, and then you'll see another equation just like this. Let's say like 3x minus 4y equals 10, something like that, where you have to line up the x's, line up the y's, and line up the constants, and you can do things like elimination method. Hopefully that rings a bell. A, B, and C, of course, in this case, are all integers, and sometimes some books ask you to make the integers so that the integers are positive integers. Vertical lines always have the equation like x equals a number, so x equals 4 would be an equation of a vertical line that goes through where x is equal to 4 through the x-intercept of 4. Horizontal line is always going to have the form y equals, let's say y equals -2. That's going to be a horizontal line that goes through the y-intercept of -2. Parallel lines are two lines that have the same slope but a different y-intercept. Okay, so those are going to be like, this is the axes. You can end up with this guy and this guy. Both have the same slope, but the y-intercepts are going to be different. And then perpendicular lines, how they're related to each other is that the slopes are opposite reciprocals. So if I start with a slope of 2/3, the slope of the perpendicular to that is going to be -3/2. Opposite, and then reciprocal is just when you flip the fraction. Let's do a little bit of practice here with distance formula, midpoint formula, and the slope formula. So let's give you 2 points. Let's say 2, 1, and I don't know, 6, 7. Do a quick graph. 2, 1, so they're going to be right there. 6, 7 is going to be right here. and let's find the distance between those 2 points. The distance formula is basically going to be the difference between the x values. In this case, the difference between the x values is 4, so distance is equal to the square root of, like I said, the distance difference between the x values, which is 4 squared, and then the difference between the y values, 6 squared, like that. Take the square root of the whole thing, and you will end up with, I think, the square root of 52, which ends up being equal to, if I simplify the radical, 2 root 13. You don't need to know yet how to do that, but hopefully you remember how to do that from last year. If I want to find the midpoint, I can see here that the midpoint is just going to be 4, 4, but if I wanted to do this algebraically, what I would do is I would do the midpoint is equal to the average of the x's, in this case it's 2 plus 6 divided by 2, which is 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and then the average of the y's, 1 plus 7 divided by 2. And hopefully you can see that 2 plus 6 divided by 2 is just 4, and then 1 plus 7 divided by 2 is 4, and just worked out, so it's 4, 4. And then the last thing here is just a reminder of how to find slope. Slope is going to be how much in the y direction, and then how much in the x direction. So here's the x direction, here's my y direction. Slope is just going to be the change in the y, which is difference in the two values for y is just going to be 6, change in the y, and then the change in the x value is going to be 4. So the slope is just going to be 3 halves. So it's going to go up 6 and over 4, or in other words, up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2. And that should be a concept that is very familiar with you from last year. Okay, I'm going to go to the back side to practice using some of the stuff that we talked about on the front side. Okay, I'm on the back side here. As we go through these problems, just a reminder that most of this should be review from last year. If it is not review from last year, please make sure you let me know so that we can get you caught up on whatever concepts you are not familiar with. All right, the first one here, use slopes to show that TIM is a right triangle. I'm going to guess here that the right angle that we're looking for, that we're verifying, is probably going to be this angle at T here. We can check that simply by checking the slope between this line and this line right here. Okay, so the slope of TM is going to be equal to change in the y divided by the change in an x, or 4/3. And then the slope of this other one, TI, is going to be equal to -3 divided by 4. And hopefully you can see from this that these are opposite reciprocals of each other, which means that you have perpendicular lines where you're talking about forming a right angle right there. Okay, and the next problem here, determine whether the following points are collinear. Collinear basically is talking about on the same line, so points on the same line. And so what we do here to check to see if they're on the same line is we're going to basically take a look at the slope between the first two and verify that it's the same as the slope between the second two. So the slope between the first two is equal to change in the y, which is 6, change in the x is 36, or let's simplify this to 1/6. And then the slope here is change in y value is going to be 2, 8 minus 6, and then 2 minus -10 is 12, 1/6. Same slope makes these 3 points collinear. Okay, diameter of a circle has endpoints. So if I have a circle like this, and my endpoints are like here and here, here's the diameter. Hopefully you remember from prior knowledge that diameter goes through the center of the circle. If I want to find the center of the circle, you know that this radius and this radius are the same, so this has got to be the center point, or the midpoint. So the midpoint is going to be the average of the x's, which is just going to be, what, 16 plus negative 4 divided by 2, so it's 6. And the average of the y's, which is 8. So that's going to be, that point's going to be 6. And then if I want to find the length of the diameter, anytime you see the word length pop out here, you should be thinking about the distance formula. So the distance formula is going to be the square root of the difference between the x's squared plus the difference between the y's squared. So the difference between the x's squared is going to be 20 squared, and then add that to the difference between the y squared, which is 18 squared, like this. So that's going to be equal to 26.9 if I plug that in my calculator. Okay, let's find some equations of lines. So equations of lines, whenever I'm looking for equations of lines, I need two things. Every single time I need two things. One, I need a point. Two, I need a slope. If I have a point and a slope, I can always put it into point-slope form and get an equation. If I don't tell you what form to put the equation in, you can put it in any form. So looking through here, passing through a point and a slope. Here's my point. Here's my slope. I can put it into point-slope form, so it's going to be y minus the y value here, 4, equals the slope, which is negative 3, times x minus the point right here, which is 2. And I'm done. If I wanted this in point slope-intercept form, if I wanted this in y equals mx plus b form, I would simply take the equation that we just got here and solve for y. So it's going to be y equals, distribute the negative 3x plus 6, and then I need to take this and add 4 to both sides, so add 4. So let's redo this, rewrite this over here. It's going to be y equals negative 3x plus 10. And that would be y equals mx plus b form, or y equals, slope-intercept form. Next problem, number 5 here, find the equation of a line passing through these 2 points. Again, all I need is a point and a slope. I have 2 points, doesn't really matter which one I use, but I can find the slope here. So the slope is going to be a change in the y over the change in the x. The slope's going to end up being negative 11/5. And let's just take either point, and let's just use the first one there, y minus 5. There's the y value from that point. My slope is negative 11/5, and then x minus negative 1 or plus positive 1. There's my equation. Find the equation of a line that's parallel to the x-axis. So parallel to the x-axis means it's a horizontal line. We know that horizontal line always has the form y equals something. And so passing through this point here, I know that it's going to be something like this. If it's 1, 6, over 1, up 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to go through that point, and it's going to be a horizontal line through that point right there. So I know that it's going through the y-intercept of 6, so y equals 6 is my equation. Find the x-intercept of a line passing through that and having a slope. So let's find the equation of the line first. We'll use point-slope form again. Y minus 7 equals, the slope is negative 4, x minus negative 5, so plus 5. And to find the x-intercept, if you remember from last year, the x-intercept, the way you do that is you know that at the x-intercept, the y value is always going to be equal to 0. If I was looking for the y-intercept, then the x value at the y-intercept is always going to be equal to 0. So I'm going to take the y equals 0 here, plug it in, and then solve for x. That'll give me my x-intercept. I think it ends up being, when I solve this thing, x equals, through the magic of having previously done this, negative 13/4. Okay, a couple more quick concepts at the bottom here just to cover, just to remind you how to graph equations of lines. So if I'm given something like this, hopefully you notice that that is in point-slope form. The point that I can see here is going to be, well, it's going to be the x value is going to be the opposite of this, so negative 2, and the y value would just be positive 5. So I'm going to take my point from negative 2 and up 5 to here, and then I'm going to use my slope that I am given there, which is 4/3. Up 4 over 3, I can keep doing that, up 4 over 3, but I can connect the two dots, 2 points. We'll determine a line, and there's my line. And the last thing I want to graph is this one right here. I can go ahead and solve this for y if I wanted to, put it into y equals mx plus b form. But I'm going to try doing this a little bit differently. I'm going to go ahead and use the intercepts. So if I make my x equal 0, that's going to make this whole term here 0, and solve for y, that's going to give me my y-intercept. My y-intercept in this case is going to be equal to positive 2. So there's my y-intercept. And then I can go ahead and do my x-intercept by making this equal 0, and this is going to still be here. So now my x-intercept is going to be equal to negative 4. And so negative 4 is right here. There's my two intercepts, connect the dots, and there's the line I can draw between there, and I just graphed the equation of that line. I'm going to stop right there and let you try some problems, okay? Take care.